Coral reefs worldwide are under pressure from a number of threats: climate change, pollution, coastal development, invasive species, and even diseases. About 5 years ago, a disease appeared off the coast of Florida that has been killing out large swaths of its coral reef. The disease, called the Stony coral tissue loss disease, is baffling marine scientists and researchers. They're not able to determine what exactly is driving the disease and how to prevent it. Well, Belize and several other countries in the region are now facing the same problem. It was detected back in July of this year in one reserve, and so far it hasn't been detected in any other parts of the country. The damaging coral disease can kill off parts of the reef, and Belize, like other countries, are searching for ways to manage it. It seems like a very difficult task ahead, considering Florida has been unable to control the spread. Today, a number of agencies met for a joint session hosted by the Belize Marine Fund and Reef Rescue Initiative to come up with a way forward to respond to the crisis. Reporter Andrea Polanco reports.
Belize's reef system is made up of a range of plants and animals. It's an incredible body of biodiversity that is supported by more than 65 species of corals and 500 species of fish. It is an underwater ecosystem that supports our fisheries and tourism industries. But back in July, something deadly started to attack some of these corals.
It's a new disease that has emerged out of Florida we believe in the US, and it's appearing in a number of countries around the region. The scientists are calling the disease Stony coral tissue loss disease. It doesn't affect humans, it doesn't affect all types of corals. It's affecting the brain corals, the boulder corals, those kind of slow-growing corals that are really important. They're fundamental corals for the reef and in building the reefs.
This disease is also present in the coral reefs of several Caribbean countries. In Belize, it is in Bacalar Chico Marine Reserve. It was first observed in the northern part of the reserve, but in recent weeks, it has been spreading further down south within the same reef complex.
Since it was detected in June, we have now seen it roughly about 3 miles into the Belizean waters. If anyone knows the northern borders of Belize, the Bacalar Chico Marine Reserve, it has been covering more than half the entire reef area of the Bacalar Chico Marine Reserve so far. So it's last seen in the Bacalar Chico area of Basel Jones. We have detected it, and we believe that it's moving farther south towards San Pedro.
And that's the problem with this disease. It spreads quickly and can kill off from 66 to 100% of the affected coral colonies. Diseased colonies can die in a matter of weeks or months. It is a disease that affects more than 20 species of corals in Belize.
It can cause lesions on the coral, and it causes the tissue of the animals of the coral to really slough off or to come away, to disappear from the corals. So it leaves bare skeleton in patches on the corals. It spreads rapidly on the coral colonies. It spreads rapidly on the corals themselves and between different types of corals. And what we're seeing is that it kills about 2/3 to 100% of all the corals of the susceptible species. So it has quite a high rate of mortality, and it has a high rate of spread between the susceptible corals. So it's a very serious risk to coral reefs in the region.
Researchers and scientists are still trying to find out what causes it and how it can be stopped.
We have multiple diseases on corals in the Caribbean. They've never been able to identify this for any coral disease. So we're guessing. We're basically guessing. We don't know what is the causative agent. We do know that there's a lot of things we can do to lessen impacts. So if you have better water quality, meaning less sewage, less pollution in the water, you're better off. And the other benefit for Belize is that most of our reefs are offshore, so they're not right up against the coastline like they are in some of the other areas. And we also have some very interesting water circulation patterns, meaning it's not just like north to south or east to west. So hopefully these are giving us a little bit of leg up in the sense that it won't ravage our reefs as quickly as it has in other areas. But this one there's no abating, it's not associated with warmer waters, and also it affects many species, over 20 species of some of our slower growing corals. So that makes it stand apart as sort of a more crisis epidemic than the previous coral diseases.
So it's a big concern for the region. For Belize, it is worrying. This is a disease that poses a serious threat to the health of our reef system, a system that provides approximately $500 million in services every year. If the disease continues to spread to other parts of our reef complex, it means bad business for our economy and our biodiversity. Our coral reefs provide habitat and shelter for most marine organisms, like the conch and lobster fisheries, which bring in over $28 million in revenue every year, as well as finfish, which is a big source of food for locals. The death of our coral colonies also means hundreds of millions in losses for the tourism industry. And perhaps one of the most important but often underreported values of our coral reef is the coastline protection it provides from hurricanes and storms. So this threatens the livelihoods and the protection of thousands of Belizeans.
The Mesoamerican Reef is central to the economies of the region, and in particular Belize, with fisheries and tourism being two of our top economic earners in this country. And so it's not only important for us from a biodiversity standpoint and the fact that the reef system is unique and is really a universal heritage, but at the end of the day, it helps determines how well we do from a number of our productive sectors.
There's some recent publications that suggest that Belize's reef provides over $9 million a year in averted damages, meaning preventing any storm damages. So losing a healthy reef system would put our coastlines more vulnerable to storm damage. One of the important things about the corals for fisheries as well as for tourism is they provide so much habitat for other organisms. We have this very intricate food web out there, so even the little tiny fish and the little tiny worms that live in the corals and the little tiny crabs, those are part of our food web. Those bring in larger fish, larger invertebrates. And so if you lose that bottom of the pyramid with no coral reefs, it could have a catastrophic effect.
It is a very real threat, and that is why conservationists, government agencies, and marine scientists have been working to monitor and try to manage the spread of the disease. The team has been applying a treatment made up of chlorine and shea butter to the diseased corals. But biologist Henry Brown says that it is not working, and so they plan to explore another form of treatment being used in Florida.
For the last month, we had 2 sites that we were applying it on in the Bacalar Chico Marine Reserve, and so we've seen that the disease is still spreading on those colonies that we had treated. So presently we're seeing that that treatment isn't working.
But for a country like Belize with limited resources and personnel, we must collaborate to understand this disease. So today they're hosting a workshop to share regional best practices to learn from Florida, Mexico, and other countries that are affected. The aim is to come up with a plan to help guide Belize's efforts to control this coral disease.
We certainly don't want a region like Belize to have to try to repeat everything that's already been done, and so that's one important thing about trying to share all the knowledge that we can and to learn from one another. It will definitely be a challenge to manage, and we're going to try and use every possible tool at our disposal and use all the lessons learned that we already have. And so these kinds of workshops are really, really important for sharing knowledge and information to try to tackle this together, because this isn't just a problem for Belize now, it's starting to show up in other parts of the Caribbean.
Reporting for News 5, I'm Andrea Polanco.